You've heard it before. Pull back, go quiet, and she'll come running. But what happens when your silence is met with nothing? No curiosity, no change, and no reaction? Don't skip silence. It's supposed to be powerful, right? A tool of self-respect, a strategy to create space and allow her to reflect, miss you, or even regret her actions. If you've been here feeling angry, perplexed, and wondering why there's quiet, it feels like you're shouting into space and, rather than drawing her attention, you've simply melted into the background. That was meant to empower you, but it's actually making things worse. You're not alone. The truth is that silence can be a powerful tool, but only when used appropriately and in the right context. If it's not working for you, it might be time to examine why it's happening and what to do next. In this video, we're breaking down why your silence might not be having the desired effect, the mistakes you might be making, and, most importantly, the concrete actions you need to take to change the situation and regain your influence. Let's get started. You're still chasing energy. First of all, her energy still follows you. It's not just about stopping communication, it's about where your energy is focused. If your thoughts, feelings, and actions are still circling her, even when you're silent, she can sense it. You may think you're being silent, but your energy conveys a different message. Imagine that you stop texting, calling, or reaching out, but you're still browsing her social media accounts, examining every action to find out who she's with or what she's doing. This invisible tether still connects you to her, and unbelievably, people notice that silence that isn't accompanied by genuine emotion. Detachment is ineffective, like attempting to extinguish a fire while still dousing it with gasoline. One of the best Stoic thinkers, Marcus Aurelius, frequently told himself not to waste time or energy on things that were beyond his control. Now, consider your circumstances. Is she under your control? Is her attention or validation something you can actually control? Of course not. What you can control is where your energy goes. Are you concentrating on reestablishing your goals, your peace of mind, and your goals? Or are you allowing her to continue to dominate your thoughts even when you are silent? When you refocus your energy and reroute it toward creating a stronger, better version of yourself, that's when silence becomes powerful. Let me give you an example. True quiet isn't simply about not talking or texting. Imagine a man who chooses to end a relationship. If he spends his days pursuing his passions, learning new skills, and improving his health, his energy changes. He is no longer chasing. Instead, he is building his silence, which she notices because it is supported by true self-control and inner strength. If your energy is still tied to her, it's time to cut the cord, not out of resentment, but out of respect for your own peace. The moment you start living for yourself again, your silence takes on a new meaning. It becomes a symbol of your development rather than a strategy to win her back. Take it from the Stoics. The secret to conquering relationships and life is to first master yourself. Then, let her sense your absence, not just by remaining silent, but also by focusing and being strong when your energy isn't focused on her. This is how you build and she doesn't think you're valuable. However, impact number 2. She doesn't perceive your worth yet. And if your quiet seems insignificant to her, it's because your presence didn't make an effect. Stoicism isn't meant to destroy you. Rather, it's a chance for you to grow. One of its main lessons is to concentrate on the things that you can manage. Stop wasting time arguing about what a good man should be. Marcus Aurelius remarked, "The question is not why she doesn't care about your silence." When a man chooses to go silent, she notices not silence but relief, because he didn't bring value that made her pause and appreciate his presence in the first place. Now contrast that with a man who is grounded, who knows his worth and who doesn't need someone else to validate his existence. The question is whether you have developed yourself to be someone worth missing. Imagine a man who is constantly seeking validation, whether it's through excessive messaging, constantly trying to impress, or constantly apologizing for who he is. It's a reflection of his realization that he doesn't need to pursue someone who doesn't appreciate his worth. It's neither a strategy nor a game. That man has developed inner strength, and his deeds, or lack thereof, naturally demand respect. Because when you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, you stop worrying about whether she notices your silence, and ironically, that's when people start to notice. If your silence isn't affecting her, take it as a signal to improve yourself, not for her, but for you. Because you create a life so rich and full that your presence becomes a privilege, and your absence a void. Stoicism teaches us that our worth comes from what we think of ourselves, not from what others think. Have you put in the work to create a life you're proud of? Are you pursuing your passions, your body, your mind, and your body? Remember that Epicus once said that wealth is not about having many material possessions, but about having few desires. When you start to value yourself more than others, you will radiate an energy that cannot be ignored. If she doesn't notice, trust me, someone who understands your worth will find that your silence will speak volumes when it reflects a life well lived and a man who doesn't need attention to feel worthy. At that point, your silence will have an impact, not because you intended it to, but because you've become the kind of person that people can't help but notice you. What do you think about this idea of developing inner strength and becoming someone whose silence speaks volumes? Have you ever had an epiphany that your attention needs to be directed inward rather than outward? If yes, please share your views in the space provided below. If this speaks to you, simply type "my quiet" to support your path to progress and self-worth. Number 3. Let's continue the chat. You're playing her. You're playing her game, not yours. This is a difficult pill to swallow if your silence is simply a tactic to get her to react in order to make her miss you, or to coerce her into returning. Even though it seems like you're doing something bold or strategic, you're still playing her game, even if it feels like you're giving her all the power. She's not winning because she's ignoring you. Rather, she's winning because you've tied your sense of peace and value to her response, which is a trap rather than a position of strength. This is not the energy of someone in control. Rather, it is the energy of someone who is desperate to win a game they never needed to play in the first place. If your silence is based on expectation, it will always fail because you are still holding on to the outcome and are waiting for her to text you back to realize she made a mistake. If she doesn't, you spiral out of control and begin to doubt your value or increase your use of manipulative tactics, which only drives her farther away. Let's change the story. Consider this. What if quiet had nothing to do with her at all? One of the most effective tools is quiet, but only when it is used with self-respect. Instead of using it to control, use it to rebuild. Quit asking if she is thinking about you, and start asking what you need to accomplish for yourself right now. True quiet entails putting the phone down, letting go of the impulse to check for updates or any indications from her, and refocusing that energy on your own life. Go to the gym. Take a look at a book you've been meaning to read and spend time with positive individuals. The irony is that when you honestly cease caring about her response, she frequently begins to understand why, because true detachment is uncommon and powerful. It's not about appearing not to care. It's about genuinely caring. Silence isn't passive. It's active. It's a decision to focus on yourself rather than on her. The moment you decide to play your own game and stop reacting, stopping waiting and stopping hoping, is when everything shifts. You regain your power and stop trying to control her and start controlling what really matters. Your own growth, your own happiness, your own life. When you do that, you stop needing her reaction entirely. That's real freedom. That's real strength. And that's when you truly win. Not her game, but your own number 4, which she knows you'll break. Letting go people are drawn to those who are at peace with themselves, who don't chase, who don't need validation to feel whole. She's aware that you will break. She has noticed this pattern and knows that eventually you will text, call, or attempt to reconnect. And when that occurs, the silence you have worked so hard to maintain loses all of its meaning and turns into noise. Ultimately, consistency is everything. If your silence is only a temporary tactic or something you've tried before but couldn't sustain, why would she take it seriously? Recognizable sound of empty space. A real Stoic person isn't someone who just maintains composure or calmness on the exterior. Rather, they embody composure and resolution from the inside out. They are rooted by their inner strength and ideals, rather than by fleeting actions or emotional manipulation. Consider whether you are keeping quiet because you truly value your tranquility, personal development, and dignity, or are you just waiting for her to notice and react? If the latter, she will see right through it. People can tell when your behavior is motivated by desperation or a covert agenda, which is why your silence feels. Consider this. A man decides to stop pursuing someone who has been dragging him. At first, he is anxious, constantly checking his phone to see if she will notice his absence. But as the days pass and the weeks go by, he begins to change his focus. He picks up a book he's been meaning to read, reconnects with friends, resumes working out, or learns a new skill. His silence is no longer about her, rather it's about him, and in doing so, he changes. The Stoics meant that you have power over your mind, not external circumstances, and that your silence becomes powerful when it comes from a sincere commitment to yourself. It is not about punishing someone or playing games, but rather about choosing to preserve your peace, cherish your time, and accept your control over your own life. Understanding this will give you strength, but if you falter, allow your feelings to control you and stop your silence too soon. It gives the impression that you lack control, which makes your silence useless. How can you reverse this? Begin by returning the focus to yourself. You should stop waiting for her response and begin creating a life that is so fulfilling that her response or lack thereof no longer determines your value. When you accomplish this, your silence will have weight and become a reflection of your strength rather than a technique. The thing that really says volumes is my pal. If this speaks to you, take a moment to consider how you handle silence in your life. Is it a tool for personal development, or does it have conditions attached in the hopes of evoking a particular response? Be consistent, be patient, and most importantly, be true to yourself. That is the kind of silence that commands respect. Post your ideas in the comments section below. Your viewpoint may, to show us that you're dedicated to developing inner determination, encourage someone else, or, if you're at a loss for words, simply type. Number 5. We would love to hear from you. You haven't changed your focus yet. However, inaction without action is like a ship without a destination. It doesn't go anywhere, and it doesn't create any waves. The harsh reality is that your quiet becomes worthless if you don't refocus your energy during this time. Time is passing, and she probably isn't even aware of it because nothing about the relationship has changed. Consider it this way. If all you're doing is sitting around thinking about what went wrong or hoping she'll suddenly realize how valuable you are, then your silence is a waste. Without self-improvement, silence is just a blank that lacks the weight to generate any durable impact. The question is whether you are making the most of your silence or allowing it to slip through your fingers. The Stoics believe that if your silence isn't having an impact on her, it's because you haven't turned your attention to the one thing you can control. Now isn't the time to sit around doing nothing but to grow and change the obstacle here. Her distance and lack of response aren't the enemy, but the opportunity, but only if you choose to see it that way. I'll give you an example. Image 2 persons going. Both of them choose to remain silent following a breakup or a similar circumstance. However, the first guy is glued to his phone all day, reading old chats and going through her posts. Reliving memories, he's trapped in a cycle that only he can escape. However, the second guy uses that quiet as an opportunity to rebuilding himself. He regularly attends the gym and takes up that pastime. Often discussed but never initiated, and even starts meditation to discover inner tranquility. He gradually begins to exude a calm assurance and self-assurance that isn't connected to her. Which do you believe she's most likely to notice? However, if you're missing the person who's stuck or moving forward, here's the problem. People are drawn to progress by nature, therefore improving oneself is captivating, conveying a subtle but impactful message that I esteem myself enough to hold on to improving with or without your involvement. And at that point, your quiet starts to have an effect. Not because you're attempting to play games or control her, but because you've turned your attention away from her and onto creating a life that is satisfying in and of itself. Silence works because of energy, not because there is no noise. Existence of a purpose, and the irony is that when you genuinely dedicate yourself to this road, her response won't mean as much because you'll be too preoccupied with whether or not she notices. Your personal development will feel less important, and that's just when it's no longer about her. Silence begins to have power after you've established a strong, grounded, and whole version of yourself independent of her. At number 6, she lacks a sense of presence, which is the hallmark of true strength. She doesn't sense any loss. Only when it produces a profound sensation of emptiness and absence can lost quiet be effective. Nonetheless, it's a clue that something is lacking if your silence doesn't affect her. Consider how you've positioned yourself in her life, not just in your dynamic. Silence only hurts. When something important that had occupied the area is missed if she doesn't feel that empty, but that doesn't mean she's uninterested or cold-hearted, perhaps as a result of not making a powerful enough impact. An idea of who you are, what you contribute, and the principles you uphold through the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. Here, perspective is provided by inner strength and character development. It serves as a reminder to concentrate less on dominating other people and more on developing into the type of person who. Ask yourself, what is it about that naturally commands respect and admiration? Is it your capacity to listen without passing judgment that she is supposed to miss? Steady, composed presence at trying moments, or maybe your special method of making her? If none of these things draw attention to your quiet, feel safe and understood, may seem more like a fleeting breeze than the abrupt loss of warmth on a chilly day, pause to consider the kind of influence you've had on her life. Consider a person who has had a profound effect on you. Perhaps it was a close friend, mentor, or even a previous relationship. Their absence is most likely wasn't overlooked since they contributed an irreplaceable depth of personality, a steadiness, a certain vigor that persisted even when they weren't. The essence of what you need to cultivate is physically present. When quiet is employed effectively, it creates space rather than being exploited for manipulation, for someone to recognize your worth. But here's the Stoic twist. You can't make someone feel your absence, but you can try to be someone who should be overlooked. Pay attention to your behavior, your principles, and your appearance, not only for her but for life in general. A guy steadfast in his values, someone whose presence is felt is one who is confident in his path and in his feelings. Imagine two situations where a guy, even in his stillness, vanishes into silent, but because he was inconsistent, his absence hardly registered. In contrast, a man who was unreliable or just plain unimpressive reliable, self-assured and considerate, the second man retreats, leaving a noteworthy gap because of his genuineness rather than because he seeks attention. Its influence lasts long after it's gone, much like the aroma of a beloved perfume. So it's not the end of the road if your quiet at this time has no effect. It's a beacon guiding you toward development. Adopt the Stoic notion of mastery. What you can control, including your thoughts, deeds, and mannerisms, be someone who exudes virtue without having to express it overtly. Then whether or not your silence says a lot, you'll know that you've contributed to developing into a guy with depth and character. If you've come this far, you're already exhibiting the quiet strength attitude of someone looking for further development and comprehension, and that this is the first step in exhibiting the kind of presence that we've been talking about. And I'd love to know what caught your attention. What struck a chord with your personal experiences the most in this message? If you're unsure of what to say, leave your views in the comments section below. Just type, and your thoughts and insights will help me strengthen my quiet side. She reads you like an open book, number 7, and could encourage others on their journey too. She reads you as if you were a book. If she is able to foresee every move you make, your silence becomes completely meaningless. Doesn't pique her interest or cause her to wonder. Rather, it turns into another step in a pattern that she has already identified. Consider whether your behavior is similar to an open book. Where is the room for her to think, and where is the intrigue? Epicus claimed that we suffer from things other than your absence. However, based on our assessment of them, this indicates that the effect of your silence or absence of it depends on your behavior, not merely on how you act. Are you genuinely composed and confident when you're silent? Or are you just exploiting silence as a strategy to elicit a response if your silence seems forced or predictable? If you try to control it, it will fail. For example, you could text her every morning like clockwork, and one day you choose to stop talking. She may notice at first, but if she is aware that you will eventually give in and that your silence will lose all of its influence, why? As there isn't a true mystery or change in your energy, taught her to anticipate your pattern, even if you feel like you're breaking it right now. Instead of employing quiet as a strategy, let's reverse the script and exhibit emotional. Neutrality is about mastering yourself, not about ignoring her or playing games. Imagine a serene sea, stable and unfazed by storms. If you achieve that degree of emotional mastery, your silence becomes a natural consequence of your self-respect rather than a conscious choice. Strategy is what generates interest. She is unsure of what to anticipate because you're grounded in your own presence and not responding to her. Let's say, when she withdraws or grows aloof, the natural reaction may be to pull back, away too, believing that she will learn a lesson from your quiet. But that's not what Stoicism teaches. A Stoic person would maintain composure and not permit her measures to control their mental health are not indicative of a lack of concern. It's about keeping your inner equilibrium by remaining calm and unreadable, and sincere manner in which you demonstrate that you're not adding to the emotional conflict. Mystery is about self-control, not manipulation. When you remain silent without anticipating a response, it becomes powerful. No longer a tool, but a representation of your personal development. Rather than being dependable, you become fascinating because you've given up chasing, not because you're trying to be. Confirmation, and that the real power is with my pal. Therefore, the next time you're tempted to be quiet to avoid making her miss you, yet you ask yourself, is my quietness a sign of my composed strength? Or am I hoping she will notice? Because when you represent the first, your silence speaks louder than words. You haven't. Your standards have not been communicated, expressed your expectations. You realize that silence isn't a substitute for limits. If you've never taken the time to explain your expectations or standards, if you try to enforce a relationship, your silence becomes worthless legislation that wouldn't operate in a community where no one ever made the rules public. Clarity is necessary for others to comprehend your values and expectations. Likewise, in relationships, keeping quiet serves solely as a reminder of your limits, not as a replace them. Let's say you're in a circumstance where someone has consistently went too far, but you've never stated clearly that this is what I require or I will not put up with this. Instead, you withdraw in silence in the hopes that they will. Simply understand that the issue is that they are unsure of what they should get. Your silence is like shouting into a space that no one can hear because it lacks the impact of a clearly stated standard. The Stoics believed that every activity should have clarity and purpose. Speaking up makes a person who understands and upholds their ideals unwavering. You're behaving purposefully to establish your boundaries by stating, "This is who I am, and this is my stance." That sort of clarity pierces because it's grounded in reality. Noise provides your quiet strength. Consider it this way. Without that foundation, quiet is just silent. Is a tool, not the entire plan, if you've made it clear what's important to you, whether it's loyalty, respect, or honor, then your silence conveys a message when those lines are crossed, which serves as a reminder that I've spoken my truth and am now allowing my deeds to speak for themselves. But if you've never stated anything at all, and your silence cannot support a falsehood, therefore the next time you're tempted to step back and let quiet speak for itself, consider whether I expressed my expectations. If the response is negative, begin there and talk when it issues. Clearly and firmly define your boundaries, then let your behavior to follow. This does not imply that you must overcompensate or constantly explain yourself. When expressed verbally, it is being purposefully truthful and explicit about your expectations. And the best thing about this strategy is that it's in line with being stoic doesn't mean being emotional or reactive. Rather, it means being firmly rooted in your principles and unfazed by what other people do. You don't have to argue or plead for respect, just show up, tell the truth. And this type of clarity develops over time and gives your quiet and unsaid strength. Since people are aware of what it stands for, keep in mind that silence devoid of standards is simply being silent, but having boundaries that are well-defined presence, assurance, and the kind of stillness that calls for deference without uttering a word. So perhaps if your silence isn't making the desired impression, it's time to return to the fundamentals, speak up, establish your expectations, and allow your quiet shows how strong your character is now that you've got a. I'd love to hear your comments on the effectiveness of conveying your standards. Have you ever encountered a circumstance where your message wasn't adequately communicated by silence alone? Intended, or maybe you've witnessed the impact that having defined boundaries has. Let's maintain the discussion in the comments section. Feel free to add your thoughts or just type silence with standards conveys this message to me in a powerful way. Your viewpoint may be exactly what someone else needs if it speaks to you. Listen to number 9 today. Your quiet is lacking. Your silence is pointless purpose. Consider it. Are you genuinely reflecting on anything during this quiet time? To develop personally and realign with your principles, or is your silence simply yelling into space in the hopes that she will notice the difference? Resides in your intention, if you're just backing off in the hope that she will pursue you, which seems passive and even manipulative, which is insecure rather than strong, and people see that the Stoics were acutely aware of this and wasted no time on pointless gestures. Their acts were purposeful, driven by logic and a feeling of direction. If you're making the most of your silence by using the opportunity to better your mental and emotional health, and consider what you really need and want, not simply from her, even physically. However, you and your life should view stillness as a chance for personal development, rather than a manipulation tool. Suppose that following a split, 2 persons become silent. The first one merely waits, obsessively checks their phone and counts down the days in the hopes the second person's silence is devoid of meaning and is characterized by impatience and worry, but makes advantage of this time to improve their fitness, rekindle their passions and explore their interests, gain knowledge from the experience, and strengthen their emotional perseverance and become a more resilient, grounded version of themselves. Who do you think she'll notice more when they bring them back into the room? It's not the one who has been waiting for your quiet, but the one who has improved. Should convey a strong message that I am confident in myself and am developing. Whoever observes that kind of presence knows that silence speaks louder than words. When it's finally broken, it commands respect, rather than her interest. Here's the Stoic insight: your growth is for you when you begin, not for her in the first place. When you think like that, you stop worrying about her response. Whether or not she notices becomes less important than the fact that you're growing into, even you admire me. Therefore, I'd like to know what your silence says about you. It's time to change your attention, go inward, and contemplate if it feels empty. Give yourself something valuable instead of waiting for her to notice. Observation is the key to transforming passive quiet into a deliberate change and regaining. The next steps to build your power. Number 10. Don't. Next actions. Create now. Don't wait. Hold on. What should you do next? The simple solution is to concentrate on becoming the type of man who flourishes in spite of recognition from others. This is about you, not about her. If you must, start out slowly, but don't go to the gym just because you want her to see you. The bodily alterations, but because strengthening yourself will serve as a reminder of your own fortitude. Enhance your money. Not to show off your wealth, but to build a life where you're. Develop your self-reliance and self-control, because you were as stoic as they were. Realize that the secret to true freedom is to master your thoughts. A man who isn't an unstoppable slave to his emotions. Imagine a man who was utterly. He was devastated when a woman he loved left him without saying goodbye, and for weeks he writhed in agony, praying that one day she would see how he was. He made the decision that he was spending his life waiting for someone who wasn't considering him. In order to gain control, he began running every morning, not for her but to clear his head. However, he enrolled in lessons for himself in order to further his job, not to demonstrate anything but to safeguard his future. He read a ton of books, huge, learn about philosophy and self-control, and found a peace inside himself that he was unaware of. When she eventually detected his disappearance and got in touch with him months later, he had changed so dramatically that he didn't recognize. She realized the guy he had been when he desired her return, but by that time it no longer mattered. That's the type of change we're discussing here, and the intention isn't to cause her to miss you. The objective is to develop into the type of man who, when you put your own needs first, feels complete without her approval. Development. You understand that outside approval, whether it originates from her or nobody can truly control you. You become unshakable. Now, you may be wondering if this stillness was a waste or if she never noticed. In actuality, it makes no difference. This is about taking everything, not about her, that you've been putting into trying to figure out what she's thinking and refocusing it to become the greatest version of yourself. And when something extraordinary occurs, you cease judging your value based on her responses. And if you get to that stage, everything shifts. She may or may not notice, but you'll be too busy building by then. Keep in mind that a Stoic man flourishes under every situation. Your silence is a chance for you to, instead of a strategy to get her back. Pause. Concentrate on your course, and let her use your energy as she sees fit. Be devoted to creating a life that brings you fulfillment and meaning. When you don't just get through these uncertain times, you concentrate on growing. When you surpass them, the question won't be whether your silence is appropriate. Has affected her, you may wonder if you want her in your life at all. Take this now, because that's the power of taking charge of your own story. Time and effort, not for her but for yourself. Believe me, the benefits will be substantial, surpass whatever her focus could ever offer you, concluding with the power of silence. Final results resides in what it creates inside you as opposed to what it requires of others. We discussed today whether your quiet isn't making the desired effect. It's an indication to turn your attention within. Use this time as a chance to development, introspection, and metamorphosis. Remember, a Stoic man doesn't rely on approval from others to gauge his value. Instead, he lives by mastering. The obvious lesson here is to embrace his inherent strength and not wait for must observe and cultivate a life that is worthy of respect, whether or not she perceives it at the time. Your self-respect and genuine purpose underpin your quiet, which communicates more powerful than words could ever be. Please let me know if this message spoke to you. Tell us in the comment section below what you plan to do today to redirect your attention to yourself. Development. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. Please remember to like this video since it's helping others learn these lessons and spread the word to anyone you believe could use them. Finally, take a look at the suggested videos on the screen to learn more about controlling your thoughts and relationships. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep developing, keep evolving, and maintain your sense of reality.